Han Sen wanted to go to Starwheel Shelter to ask Lai Xinglan about the detailed information of Black God's shelter. Only when he had more information about his enemy could he hit his enemy harder. Especially, Han Sen must find out about Black God's knife skills. Lai Xinglan was very glad to see Han Sen visiting him. Hearing Han Sen explaining his conflict with Black God, he frowned and said, "Black God is more and more arrogant and wanton." Lai Xinglan explained the background of Black God in details to Han Sen, which made Han Sen frown slightly. The family of Black God was quite ordinary, but he was working for a force in the Alliance, which made it almost impossible for Han Sen to kill him in the Alliance. Among all the shelters, he was the strongest on the ice field. In addition, every month he provided a large sum of income to the force in the Alliance, which gave him strong support. It was not easy to take him down. As for the knife skills of Black God, all Lai Xinglan knew was that it was called Tornado Knife. He did not know how it worked either. Lai Xinglan only knew that when Black God made the move, the knife would disappear for a moment, as if it was teleported. Of course, Black God was merely an evolver, so he could not have the ability to make the knife teleport. There must be some special techniques that they did not know of. Tornado Knife, it sounds familiar somehow. Han Sen felt he had heard about the name somewhere. Thinking about it, Han Sen then remembered that Tang Zhenliu had once said that one of his knife skills was Tornado Knife. However, from what Han Sen could remember, Tang Zhenliu did not have the ability to make his weapon disappear. Would this Black God be related to Tang Zhenliu? Han Sen was determined to ask Tang Zhenliu first when he went back, to figure out what Tornado Knife was about. After he returned to the Alliance, Han Sen asked Jai Yanran to get him the number of Tang Zhenliu in the military. Han Sen then contacted Tang Zhenliu. "Han Sen, how does it feel to be a soldier?" Tang Zhenliu asked Han Sen, smiling. "I don't feel much," Han Sen shrugged and said. He was telling the truth. Although he was now Jai Yanran's guard, the actual guard was Annie, so Han Sen was merely a declaration. In fact, no one expected that Han Sen could protect Jai Yanran as an evolver. His position was required by Jai Yanran herself, and initially her guard was only Annie. However, since Annie had arrived, Han Sen had a lot less time to spend with Jai Yanran. That woman was following Jai Yanran almost 24/7, which made Han Sen very mad about it, even questioning whether she was a lesbian in love with Jai Yanran. Haha, your life is great. With the beauty on your side, it is not like an ordinary service. You are completely on vacation with your girl. Lin Feng and I are having a terrible time. We are either training or fighting the Shura, almost losing our lives several times, said Tang Zhenliu, feeling upset. How come you guys are at the front? Han Sen asked, puzzled. With the background of Tang Zhenliu and Lin Feng, it should be easy for them to stay in the back, but they were serving in the front. It is completely Lin Feng's idea. He said only by doing this can we exercise ourselves. He must stay in this hell and the wars are so frequent that I have almost gone mad. Although Tang Zhenliu said that, he was smiling. Han Sen looked at Tang Zhenliu carefully and found he had much darker skin than before. He also looked tougher with an injury that had not cured on his forehead, looking more like a man. Tang Zhenliu explained briefly what was happening on his side. Lin Feng and he were Warframe soldiers, and on their planet, humans and Shura were coexisting, fighting for the mines. However, because of the location of the planet, no one could take the entire planet. Both forces had armies on the planet and they fought once in a while. When they had finished chatting, Han Sen then asked about Black God and Tornado Knife. After hearing Han Sen's words, Tang Zhenliu hit the table madly and said coldly, "Damn it. Han Sen, if you have the chance, kill the bastard for me." Han Sen was surprised to see Tang Zhenliu being so excited, so he asked Tang Zhenliu what had happened. Tang Zhenliu told Han Sen that Tornado Knife was originally one of the family secrets of the Tangs. Later on, due to some incidents in the family, Tornado Knife was robbed by others, which was a huge shame for the family. Then I could act freely. Han Sen was initially afraid that there might be some kind of connection between Black God and Tang Zhenliu, which might be awkward in the future. At this point, he was completely relaxed. Kill him, and I will treat you to drinks. Do not worry about people supporting Black God. If you could kill him, I will take care of those people. Tang Zhenliu told Han Sen about the core secret of Tornado Knife, wishing Han Sen could get rid of Tang Zhenliu, giving his family justice. After hearing Tang Zhenliu's explanation, Han Sen understood why it looked like Black God's knife had disappeared. In fact, it did not truly disappear. Just because the Tornado Knife was so fast, it felt like it had disappeared. The speed was not continuous, but a temporary effect in the attack. In a short amount of time, the speed of the knife increased greatly, making the high speed even higher, causing a visual illusion. In fact, the knife seen by the eyes was the shadow of the knife. The real knife had already changed its location. Although Han Sen had understood the mechanism of tornado knife, it was still very difficult to tackle it. At that kind of speed, even if he knew what was happening, it would be useless if he could not follow the knife. With Han Sen's eyesight, he could not even see the knife, so even if he knew the knife was elsewhere, he could not block it. Tang Zhenliu did not have enough speed and strength in the past, so he did not achieve the same effect as Black God. Currently, if he used the skills, he would not be worse than Black God. Do you have time tomorrow? Tang Zhenliu asked Han Sen. Yes, replied Han Sen. Okay then. You go to the virtual camp tomorrow and I will spar with you. Today I have something else, so I must leave now. Tang Zhenliu was a decisive person, so he directly hung up. Han Sen knew that Tang Zhenliu was going to spar with him using tornado knife, which was great news to Han Sen. The next day, Han Sen logged into the virtual camp at the time agreed with Tang Zhenliu. According to the ID name that Tang Zhenliu told him, Han Sen added him as a friend. Tang Zhenliu accepted Han Sen's request and invited him to enter the room, changing the setting to no audience allowed. Tornado knife was one of the secrets of Tang Zhenliu's family. Although it was leaked once, the secret shall still be kept. Tang Zhenliu demonstrated for Han Sen in a slower speed than normal. In addition, he told Han Sen about the keys of the tornado knife in slow motion, which could not be seen by outsiders. The front was different from the back. Because Tang Zhenliu could not make much time every day, he was sacrificing his limited resting time and sparing 1 hour a day. Therefore, the two did not speak at all and went directly into the fight. Tang Zhenliu slashed at Han Sen with his weapon, and Han Sen tried to block it. When the two weapons were about to clash, Tang Zhenliu's weapon weirdly disappeared at Han Sen's side. When it appeared again, it was already on Han Sen's chest. Although Han Sen could use his footwork to dodge the strike, it would not be meaningful at all. If he could not block the strike up front, the best Han Sen could do was not to lose. If he could not beat Black God, it would mean nothing to Han Sen. Han Sen did not continue to dodge Tang Zhenliu's strikes, taking the strike directly and feeling the rhythm of the skills. Again, Han Sen waved his weapon again, attacking Tang Zhenliu one more time. Although Tang Zhenliu had explained the key to the skills, Han Sen still felt it was difficult to predict the tornado knife in actual fight. It was mainly because the speed of the weapon was so fast that Han Sen could only stop it by attacking Tang Zhenliu. The best he could do was mutual destruction, and most of the time, Han Sen was killed off directly. Neither of them could predict the other. However, because tornado knife was fast enough, Tang Zhenliu was able to cut Han Sen earlier, which Han Sen had no solution to cope with. Again. 1 hour had soon passed, but the result was not that great. When Tang Zhenliu was using all he got, Han Sen still could not block tornado knife. There is a unique way to use force in my family, which is integrated in tornado knife. It allows the speed to be incredibly high momentarily. At the same fitness level, one is unlikely to block tornado knife. In addition, Black God is even stronger than you. If you want to beat him, you can only rely on your footwork and wait for him to expose his weaknesses. Otherwise, it is hard for you to win. I am only sparring with you to get you familiar with the rhythm and attacking range of tornado knife, so that you will have more information when you face him again, Tang Zhenliu said and quickly left the virtual camp. Han Sen knew that Tang Zhenliu was right. If it was the one-on-one, Han Sen could use his footwork to deal with Black God, and it will not be easy for Black God to beat him. However, that way, he will only have an opportunity when Black God made a mistake, which meant handing the initiative to Black God, which Han Sen could not accept. In addition, the Black God's shelter was huge, so Han Sen would never have an opportunity to fight Black God one-on-one. Black God would definitely be surrounded by other evolvers. In order to kill Black God, Han Sen had to block tornado knife up front. So fast, how shall I block it? Han Sen thought to himself but did not have any conclusion. Beep beep. As Han Sen was thinking, he suddenly heard a call on the virtual camp. He took a look and saw it was from Ms. Perfume. Han Sen chose to accept, and Ms. Perfume suddenly appeared in front of Han Sen. She looked at Han Sen and asked, "Coach, do you have time to teach me? I have several questions about last session that I want to ask you. I'm afraid today is not a good time." Han Sen shook his head. He was thinking what the solution to tornado knife was and was in no mood to teach Ms. Perfume. King Xuan was slightly disappointed. She had waited for a long time to see Soldier on the warship again, but she did not have the opportunity to ask him questions. Naturally, she was let down. When King Xuan was about to say goodbye, she suddenly heard Han Sen asked, "Do you practice fast sword or knife?" "Yes, but I am not that good at it," King Xuan answered hastily. Atomic fission that she practiced was great in both strength and perseverance. That was why her techniques were all quite balanced. There are no extreme techniques. Then, if you encounter someone who is much faster than you, what will you do? Han Sen did not truly want to ask her, but only voiced his concern. Qin Xuan thought about it and said, avoid it with my footwork and then find the perfect opportunity. Qin Xuan thought he was using questions to teach her and felt quite happy inwardly, not daring to take Han Sen's question lightly. If you could not dodge and have to fight it out with your opponent, what then? Han Sen asked again. If we are fighting for life and death, the faster one will definitely win. If I am not faster than my opponent, and I could only enhance my strength, Qin Xuan said after serious consideration. Why strength? Han Sen looked at her in surprise. He initially thought Qin Xuan would say to increase her defense. Qin Xuan thought Han Sen was testing her, so she organized her words and said, if one is fast, then his strength must not be too strong. If I am strong enough, I will not die from his strike. However, my strike will kill him. That is a method. Although what you said might work, it is not the answer I want. Han Sen shook his head with a wry smile. This method would not work against Tornado Knife. The strength of Black God was stronger than Han Sen's to begin with. Even if they trade one strike for the other, Han Sen would be the one who suffered more. I am not smart enough. Please instruct me, coach. Qin Xuan could not think of a way to win when her opponent was faster than her. Han Sen wanted to say he did not know, but when he saw Miss Perfume, Han Sen suddenly thought of one thing. Last time, when he was teaching her, he was explaining the techniques in Dongxuan Sutra. At that time, he explained several techniques that he was practicing. However, thinking of those techniques, Han Sen's eyes suddenly lit up. It was not about those techniques, but about some other words in Dongxuan Sutra. The other words were also included in the parts of Dongxua Sutra that Han Sen had already translated. It was related to what Han Sen had learned about footwork, but Han Sen was not able to perceive it fully. However, thinking back, Han Sen felt he suddenly understood those words. He invited Ms. Perfume to fight and said to her, come on, use all you got to attack me at full speed. Qin Xuan was overjoyed, thinking Han Sen was trying to teach her. She did not save any energy and cut at Han Sen with Thunder Knife at full speed. Han Sen had been practicing Thunder Knife as well recently, so he was quite familiar with the skill. When Qin Xuan just raised her hand, before the skill was launched, she felt she had to stop. If Qin Xuan continued her attack by force, her arm would hit Han Sen's hand blade. Qin Xuan took back her hand and was ready to attack again, but the result was the same. Han Sen's hand was again placed at a spot that made her feel very uncomfortable. Qin Xuan had changed the way to attack 7 to 8 times, but she was never able to make a complete strike. All of her strikes were forced to change in the middle, which made her feel so uncomfortable that she almost wanted to vomit blood. This way, Qin Xuan was even more respectful toward Han Sen, believing more firmly that Han Sen was a martial arts master and some incredible figure in the military. I understand. Coach, you are saying that even if my opponent is fast enough, as long as there is space and distance, I could stay still to fight his moves and buy myself time using space and distance so as to react. Qin Xuan said happily. It is not completely like that. You do not understand. If you practice more, you will naturally understand it in the future. Han Sen was very happy, and he did not mean to put Qin Xuan down. Qin Xuan was right, he did buy some time using the distance. However, this amount of time was not enough for him to beat the opponent. The key to win was the word block. In ancient times, there was a strategy in wars called attacking Y to save Zhao, which meant attacking the opponent in his vital parts to make him give up the original target. This technique was also called no-kill. The aim of this technique was not to kill the enemy, but to force the enemy to take defensive position. As long as the enemy turned from attacking to defending, then Han Sen could use his footwork. Since the enemy no longer had the ability to attack, it was just a matter of time to beat him. In order to use the blocking technique well, Han Sen must first figure out the importance of each moves, which meant he needed to understand the strengths and weaknesses of his opponent. For example, Han Sen himself had also practiced Thunder Knife, so he knew what the positions that Qin Xuan had to defend herself were. If Qin Xuan uses a different technique that Han Sen was not familiar with, the effect would not be as good. Currently, what was beneficial to Han Sen was that Tang Zhenliu, who had the same level at using Tornado Knife, was his sparring partner. All he needed to do was to fully understand Tornado Knife, and then he could reach the effect that Tang could not attack him at all. Thinking of that, Han Sen wished that he could fight Tang Zhenliu right away so as to familiarize himself with Tornado Knife. However, unfortunately, Tang Zhenliu had too many tasks in the front, so he only had limited time every day. When he was in the middle of a project, he did not have time at all. Even so, Tang Zhenliu was astonished by Han Sen's performance. Initially, he only wanted for Han Sen to avoid the attacks when Han Sen got familiar with the knife skills. However, Han Sen was trying to block the attacks altogether. Tang Zhenliu originally thought that was something couldn't be achieved. It was a family secret, and he knew very well how strong the techniques were, which were impossible to block. However, the more he sparred with Han Sen, the more he doubted his own thought. When facing Han Sen, Tang Zhenliu felt harder and harder to make his moves. He felt like he was trapped in a barbed cage. Whenever he tried to reach out his arm, he would be stabbed. And when he was trying to reach out his legs, his thighs would be hurt. The more he fought Han Sen, the more painful Tang Zhenliu felt. He almost wanted to drop his weapon. Weirdo. You and Lin Feng are both weirdos. Finally, one day, Tang Zhenliu could not take it anymore. He threw his weapon away and exclaimed madly at Han Sen. Han Sen knew that his blocking skills were quite good now. Although it might not work against other skills, it will definitely function when it came to Tornado Knife. All he needed to do was practice more in order to beat Black God. This time, you better not give me the chance. Han Sen was thinking how he could get rid of Black God the bastard. Tang Zhenliu was feeling quite glad. Luckily, his family had more secrets than Tornado Knife. Otherwise, in the future, he did not need to fight Han Sen again and could simply call him Grandpa. In the meantime, Tang Zhenliu swore to himself that he would never use his family skills again in front of Han Sen. Han Sen asked Tang Zhenliu to practice with him a few more days. In the end, Tang Zhenliu had become the one who was tortured. He could not make his moves, and he was beaten miserably by Han Sen. Currently, Han Sen was very confident to face Tornado Knife. However, he was not sure whether Black God had practiced other impressive skills. In addition, Black God had many master fighters that it was almost impossible to kill him without a perfect opportunity. If I could not kill you, I must gain some profits first. After learning from Lai Zinglan the recent moves of Black God, Han Sen squinted his eyes. At this time of the year, because of the ocean currents or other causes, on the beach of Ice River where there were normally no creatures at all would witness the arrival of a large number of snakefish. They came to the beach from the ocean for unknown reason. Most snakefish were primitive creatures. However, if the cluster of fish was huge enough, there might be mutant and sacred blood snakefish among them. The beach of the Ice River was the territory of Black God's shelter. Every year, tens of thousands of snakefish would climb up from the ocean. They could always harvest several mutant snakefish and a sacred blood snakefish king. This was one of the fixed benefits of Black God's shelter. At this time of the year, Black God would summon a large number of people to come to the beach to hunt snakefish. Han Sen arrived at the Ice River early. However, he did not go hunting, but dug an ice cave that only one person could fit in at a quarter of the beach. He then hid in the cave and piled up snow on the outside. No matter how hard Black God fought, he could not predict that someone would be hiding in the ice cave for several days. After the large cluster of snakefish had come to the shore, he led people to clear up the place and did not find Han Sen. Han Sen was hiding inside the ice cave, biting the meat jerky as he observed the situation from the gap he kept deliberately. A large number of snakefish started to climb out of the ice river and reached the beach covered in ice. More and more fish arrived, yet no one knew what they were trying to do. More than 1,000 people had gathered from the Black God's shelter, hunting the snakefish that had arrived. Snakefish looked like sea snakes. In fact, different from snakes, they did not have fangs or any teeth. Because they were covered in slime, weapons would easily slide on their skin. If one was entangled by the creature, its sharp scales on the stomach could even break one's bones. Ordinary people did not have the conditions to kill them. Only a large force like Black God could organize some new people to hunt snakefish together. Because the sacred blood snakefish king had not appeared, the strong evolvers with a fitness level above 100 including Black God himself did not make a move. All they did was to lead thousands of evolvers to hunt the creatures on the beach. There were 2 to 3 days from the snakefish arriving at the shore until they returned to the ocean, so Han Sen was in no rush. The cold inside the ice cave did not have much of an effect on him. However, he was uncomfortable crawling and had to use jade skin to make himself feel better since he could not move. Luckily, the second day since the snakefish came to the shore, Han Sen heard exclaims among the crowd. The dark red snakefish was a bit more than 6 feet long. Standing on top of the wall, it had a pair of fins or wings on the back of its head. As the fins moved, it made a weird noise. The sacred blood snakefish king had eventually arrived. Han Sen suddenly became excited, observing the condition on the outside. Once he had an opportunity, he would go ahead and catch the snakefish king. He had even planned the route to escape. After the Snake Fish King appeared, the other snake fish became even crazier, rushing to the floor. The advanced fighters at Black God's shelter eventually moved. 5 or 6 evolvers with fitness above 100 killed their way toward the Fish King, led by Black God. Other people continued to guard their own positions, killing the other snake fish. They did not look nervous at all. Obviously, they were quite experienced. Black God and his fellows rushed out, and primitive snake fish could not block their way at all. Very soon, they were approaching the Snake Fish King. Snake Fish King issued a strange squeak and bounced itself into the air. Its fins moving, it flew in the sky like a bird. Its little wings were too small. On the back of its head, they looked like a pair of ears that were slightly bigger. Unexpectedly, it could fly with the wings. Black God and the rest were besieging the Fish King. As they hit it with their weapons obviously slid off. They could not kill the creature in a short amount of time. The Snake Fish King was 100 times more slimy than an eel. Even Sacred Blood Beast's soul sword would slide off its body, not leaving any marks. Even Black God's tornado knife did not work on it, which made Han Sen feel quite surprised. If they could not hurt the Snake Fish King, how did Black God and the rest kill it in the past years? Those people did not use any special method but attacked the Snake Fish King together while killing the primitive snake fish that were approaching them. After watching for a while, Han Sen could guess what they were trying to do. Although that Snake Fish King could fly, obviously it could not last long in the air since it took more than the little wings to fly. The first time when it was flying, it could maintain about 15 minutes in the air. However, gradually, it could last shorter and shorter in the air and had to land. In the air, he did not have any point of force application. However, when it was on the land, there were points of force application. When the weapons cut it again, they would not slide off that easily. After watching for more than half an hour, Han Sen noticed that the Snake Fish King was weaker and weaker. He knew that it was his opportunity, took away the snow on the outside, and climbed out of the ice cave. Currently, it was the key moment for him to hunt the Snake Fish King. Everyone was doing their best to hunt the snake fish, and no one had extra energy to look at other people. In addition, they had already cleared the space and blocked the way to the beach, so there was no way they could expect an outsider present. Han Sen got inside the group of thousands of people, and no one found he was an outsider. Han Sen killed several snake fish casually and gradually approached. Black God and the rest had already circled the Snake Fish King in different directions, for fear that it might escape into the ocean. It was harder and harder for the Snake Fish King to fly. It looked like it was about to be dead. Once it lost the ability to fly and could only wiggle on the ground, it would be easily killed. Han Sen gradually approached Black God and his mates, focusing his eyes on their moves. Han Sen thought, this is a good opportunity. If I could kill Black God here, then Black God's shelter would have no leader, which would make it much easier for me to conquer the shelter. Initially, Han Sen only wanted to steal the Snake Fish King. Now that he had an opportunity to assassinate Black God, he would not let it go. Han Sen focused on Black God first. Very soon, the Fish King could no longer fly. Black God was overjoyed, found an opportunity, and rushed to cut it in half. Brother, watch out. When Black God was about to make a strike, he suddenly heard his friend calling him and felt ominous. Black God was indeed quite impressive and decisive. The moment he heard the voice, he directly fell forward. However, it was still a bit too late. He felt a burning pain on his back. It seemed that the armor on his back and his muscles were slashed open by sharp weapons. Han Sen felt it was a shame. Black God and the top evolvers were a bit too far from the crowd. When he approached them, he was still discovered by an evolver opposite him, who warned Black God in time. With his claws, he did not kill Black God this time. Black God fell to the ground and rolled a dozen feet away, holding back the pain on his back. The 5 evolvers with fitness level above 100 came to Han Sen. Han Sen did not linger. His strike did not kill Black God, so he knew that he had lost his opportunity. He rushed to the Snake Fish King directly, using the claws to cut off its head. Taking up the creature's body, Han Sen ran toward the ice river. Sacred Blood creature Snake Fish King killed. No beast soul gained. Eat its meat to gain 0 to 10 sacred geno points. The evolvers tried to stop Han Sen, but Han Sen swayed left and right, zigzagging among 3 persons momentarily. He ran past 5 persons non-stop. When Black God got up, holding back his pain, Han Sen had already gone. It is that asshole. He's not dead yet. Kill him for me. Black God saw what Han Sen looked like, recognized him, and yelled to the evolvers in surprise and madness. The evolvers quickly caught up with Han Sen. However, Han Sen directly jumped into the ice river. A giant silver eel appeared underneath his feet. The giant silver eel broke the ice on the river and was 100 feet away instantaneously, leaving Black God and his friends appalled on the land. Black God, I am taking some of the interests today. Next time I see you I will kill you, Han Sen said loudly and rolled the silver eo away. You are dead. I will kill you definitely. Kill you. Black God was so mad that he was standing, cursing at Han Sen's direction. When he scolded Han Sen, he moved his back, which made his injury so painful that his face became grim. Black God became very mad. Not only was he almost killed by a sneak attack, but his sacred blood Snakefish King was stolen. In addition, the one who did all that was someone who he thought had died underneath the frozen lake. Han Sen disregarded what Black God did and rode the silver eel away, landing at a remote location. He summoned Meowth and rode Meowth away from the territory of Black God's shelter. La la la, la la la. I am a barbecue master. Han Sen barbecued the snakefish that he had skinned on the convenient stove he brought with him and hummed a little song happily. It was not easy to get his hands on such a sacred blood creature. This sacred blood Snakefish King would give him 8 or 9 sacred Geno points at least. What was more important was that this creature was stolen from Black God, which made Han Sen feel it was extra tasty. Just by smelling the fragrance of the barbecue, he could not stop his mouth from watering. Unfortunately, they only come to the shore once a year. Before the barbecue was done, Han Sen saw a man coming his way in the snow outside. Black God's guys are here. Han Sen was surprised, glanced that way, and it did not look like it. If it were the people from Black God's shelter, they should be more than one person. The person walked closer and Han Sen saw what he looked like. Out of Han Sen's expectation, he knew the man. Although they were not familiar with each other, he had a deeper impression of him. The grandson of Senator Yi Dongmu. When Han Sen participated in the contest of First God's Sanctuary using Dollar's identity, Han Sen beat Yi Dongmu to become top 10. And the Fairy Queen was his reward for being one of the chosen. After that, he had never heard the news about Yi Dongmu again. Unexpectedly, Han Sen ran into the person here. Yi Dongmu walked directly opposite Han Sen. He looked at the barbecue on the stove and placed a fox-like red creature on the snow. Pointing to the barbecue, he asked, I want to trade this mutant creature for your barbecue. Will you do it? No, Han Sen rejected directly, thinking, you think I'm an idiot. A mutant creature for my sacred blood creature. Yi Dongmu could not help frowning, checking Han Sen out again. Because he had not had anything cooked in so long. He wanted to trade the mutant creature he hunted for the barbecue, which was unexpectedly turned down by the other person. Can I borrow your stove? Name your price. Yi Dongmu could not tell where Han Sen was from, so he did not mind the answer. Yi Dongmu pointed to Han Sen's stove said, the stove is quite cheap. Just use it. Han Sen smiled and said. Yi Dongmu did not say anything but summoned a dagger to clean up the fox-like creature. Cutting off a piece of meat, he started to make the barbecue. The two persons did not converse much but barbecued respectively. When Han Sen barbecue was about ready, he took a bite and felt it was so tasty. The grease melted in his mouth. So nice. Yi Dongmu had been working hard to cultivate, trying to enhance his martial arts skills and clear his name that was belittled by Dollar. He often spent several months every time he came to the God's Sanctuary, and sometimes even more than half a year. On the ice field, all he could eat what was raw meat. Even if he was made of iron, his stomach would no longer take it. How long have you spent in God's Sanctuary? Yi Dongmu asked Han Sen. Not long, just a few days. Han Sen said. Have you heard about Dollar recently? Yi Dongmu had spent about 6 months in the God's Sanctuary this time. He had been hunting alone all the time and did not have any news from the outside. Han Sen was dazed, as he did not expect that was what Yi Dongmu would ask. He thought about it and said, I heard that there was someone named Kill Dollar on the official platform. He had won consecutively. Some people said he was Dollar himself, and I wondered if that was true. Tell me about the details, Yi Dongmu said immediately. I have only heard about it. No one knows whether Kill Dollar's actual Dollar, and I will be the last one to tell. It must be him. Except for him, no one could be that good, Yi Dongmu said assertively. Han Sen was embarrassed inwardly. There were definitely evolvers who could be as good. He just had not met a truly good opponent. I want to hunt a sacred blood creature and need an assistant. Come with me. I will spare you 10% of the meat after I succeed. 20%. Han Sen blinked and doubled the price. Let's go. Yi Dongmu did not bargain and asked Han Sen to go with him. Han Sen liked people like this a lot. Rich people who did not care about the price and only cared to be happy are the best. Following Yi Dongmu eastward on the ice field, Han Sen reached the snow-capped mountains in less than 2 days. If he were to go back to Goddess Shelter, he must cross this region. However, because of the terrain, it was not easy to pass this region. Furthermore, if he encountered sacred blood creatures, it was too dangerous to fight on the mountains without the ability to fly. If he were not careful, he would fall into deep valleys. The reason that Lai Zinglan and Black God would try to conquer the royal shelter before they expand to the mountainous region was because of the terrain, which was unsuitable for large-scale fights. You are not trying to enter the mountains to hunt sacred blood creatures? Han Sen asked Yi Dongmu, surprised. Relax, there is no risks. I'm only asking you to lure the creature out for me. The rest is my job. That creature had suffered in my hands, so it would not dare to come out if I were there, Yi Dongmu said quietly. Han Sen did not say anything more and followed Yi Dongmu into the snow-capped mountains. Like Yi Dongmu said, he did not go deep into the mountains, but stopped after climbing one mountain. Just walk around ahead of me. When the creature had come out, run in my direction. Yi Dongmu dug a hole in the snow and lay down, asking Han Sen to bury him with the snow. Han Sen knew that like himself, Yi Dongmu was also an assassin. He did not say much and followed Yi Dongmu's instruction, walking around in the valley ahead of him. Looking around, all he could see was continuous snow-capped mountains. There were no creatures, let alone sacred blood creatures. What creatures would be here? Han Sen looked for a while and did not spot any creatures. As Han Sen became impatient, he suddenly heard hoofbeat. From afar, he saw a donkey-like creature with a pair of antlers running from behind a mountain. Its hooves were rather wide, which prevented it from being trapped in the snow. It ran toward Han Sen quickly, faster and faster. There is a creature indeed. Han Sen did not know whether this one was the one that Yi Dongmu was talking about. He turned around to run toward where Yi Dongmu was hiding. The creature looked like it could fly, running fast on the snow. Luckily, Han Sen was close to where Yi Dongmu was hiding and soon reached him. The creature followed Han Sen and approached him quickly. Yi Dongmu quickly emerged from underneath the snow, appearing under the stomach of the creature, stabbing his dagger into its stomach, making a long cut. The creature was bleeding on its stomach. Forgetting about Han Sen, it neighed, turned around and ran. However, Yi Dongmu would never let it go. Catching up with it, he cut the creature repeatedly. The creature finally fell on the floor quietly. Good skills, good footwork. Han Sen couldn't help complimenting. Yi Dongmu had made great progress in these years indeed. In addition, he was in Second God's Sanctuary several years earlier, so he had improved his Geno points greatly. If it were dollar, he would have killed the creature with the first strike. I am not good enough, Yi Dongmu said seriously. Han Sen felt very embarrassed inwardly. Yi Dongmu was simply obsessed. It should have been several years since Yi Dongmu saw him. So, there was no way Yi Dongmu knew what level Han Sen was on. It was completely his own illusion. Is that the sacred blood creature that you were talking about? Han Sen walked up to the creature and asked, puzzled. Although this creature ran fast, it did not look like a sacred blood creature judging from its fitness. Yi Dongmu shook his head. Not this one. This is a mutant creature. Yi Dongmu then paused and said, this is good as well. We will use this body as the bait. That creature would come out smelling the blood. You can stay here and make a barbecue out of this mutant creature. Yi Dongmu then dug another hole and hid himself again. Brother, you do not need to work so hard. How about we continue after eating something together? Asked Han Sen. No need. If it were dollar, he would have done even better. Yi Dongmu said seriously and urged Han Sen to bury him up. Han Sen did not know what to say. Even he felt somewhat embarrassed. He did not feel he was as good as Yi Dongmu had described. Han Sen buried Yi Dongmu up again, dissecting the mutant creature's body. Han Sen thought it was a bit too big for him to eat. He then summoned Meowth to offer him the food. Meowth bit the body of the mutant creature excitedly. As for Archangel, she did not care to eat mutant meat at all, not wanting to come out. Han Sen took out a piece of barbecued snakefish king, eating while squatting. He soon heard the voice telling him the increase of sacred Geno points. Seeing that Han Sen was feeding mutant meat to his pet, Yi Dongmu frowned slightly. This behavior was a bit too extravagant. Even Yi Dongmu himself had never done that before. After all, the resources on this ice field were so limited that Yi Dongmu had not even filled up his mutant Geno points yet. After Han Sen had just taken a few bites, he heard loud hoofbeat behind the mountain again. Meowth that was eating suddenly bristled. It bared its teeth toward the direction of the noise and growled fiercely. Han Sen stared at the direction of the snow-capped mountain, and soon saw a creature that looked like a triceratops rushing out from behind the mountain. Its horn looked like a silver awl and its skin looked like iron. The moment the triceratops came out, Han Sen felt dazed. Han Sen wondered if Yi Dongmu was dumb. Such a large creature weighed at least a dozen tons. It would take more than a year for someone to eat it. What use would it be even if he killed it? But then Han Sen thought, Yi Dongmu was probably just trying to gain the beast's soul. The meat was not that important to him. Han Sen felt a bit upset. However, it would not be a waste if he got the meat. He would not eat himself, but he could feed Archangel. Han Sen took Meowth and ran back. He did not need to move a finger anyway. With 20% of the meat, he could feed Archangel happily. That Triceratops had rushed to the location of the body of the mutant creature. Without a pause, it still came toward Hansen. Idongmu, who was buried in the snow, suddenly came out of the pit, stabbing his dagger at the stomach of the Triceratops. The skin of the Triceratops was much thicker than that of the mutant creature. The dagger of Idongmu disappeared in the skin of the Triceratops, yet no blood came out. Only black leather and white fat was cut open. The Triceratops tried to get rid of Idongmu under its stomach. However, Idongmu moved up its body and came to its back like a gecko, stabbing its back fiercely. The Triceratops roared and stamped like crazy, trying to take Idongmu down. However, Idongmu stuck himself so closely to the creature that he would not fall. Hansen found a remote spot and sat down, caressing the head of Meowth, and enjoying his barbecue as well as the performance of Idongmu. Bravo! I will give you 9.9 for this move. When seeing an excellent move, Hansen could not help sharing. Idongmu was so upset. The skin of the Triceratops was so thick and tough that only a little blood came out when he had stabbed the creature multiple times. On the other hand, the Triceratops seemed to have infinite strength. Jumping and wiggling, it almost got rid of Idongmu several times. He had to hold the creature tied with both hands and stick close to it. There was no chance for him to touch the dagger again. However, Hansen was enjoying the show, applauding when seeing something good. Come and help me. Idongmu could not last any longer and yelled to Hansen. That is not okay. We had an agreement. You give me 20% of the meat and all I need to do is to lure the sacred blood creature out. I will not mind other businesses. Hansen shook his head and said, if this creature runs away, you will get nothing, Idongmu exclaimed again. If you want me to make a move, that is fine. However, that way, we could not split the meat like this. I must have 60% of the meat. 20% is my reward for leading it out, and the other 40% is what I should have for collaborating with you to kill it. Hansen counted his fingers and said, 60% is fine. You help me kill it, and you can take 60% of the meat. Idongmu was in no mood to bargain with Hansen. His main goal was to try to gain the beast's soul. The meat was less important. Okay, that's a deal. Hansen then stood up, summoned his claws and walked toward the Triceratops. Help me to distract it from the side. Seeing Hansen approaching, Idongmu quickly said. However, Hansen did not pay any attention to him. He walked directly to face the Triceratops. The Triceratops noticed Hansen and rushed to him with its eyes red. It almost looks like a locomotive at full speed, incredibly scary. Hansen was still walking toward the Triceratops at a normal speed. The moment it was about to clash with the Triceratops, Hansen's body suddenly leaned back. The Triceratops rushed over Hansen's body. Hansen was lying in the gap between its legs. The Triceratops went ahead but did not hurt Hansen at all. Hansen dusted off the snow on his body and got up. The Triceratops screamed with blood coming out of its stomach. It wiggled and fell to the ground with a thump. It struggled several times but failed to get up again. Idongmu jumped off the back of the Triceratops, observed the struggling creature carefully and saw 3 marks on its stomach that went through its entire body. Obviously, they were left by Hansen when he brushed by the creature. Idongmu stared at Hansen for a long while. He did not expect that the random person he met was such a master. He knew the impressive figures on the ice field, so he did not pay too much attention to Hansen when he first saw Hansen. However, Hansen's strike made Idongmu feel utterly surprised. If you do not move fast, it will die, Hansen noted Idongmu. Normally speaking, under these circumstances, Hansen would abide by the agreement. Since he had agreed to help Idongmu kill the creature and he had 60% of the meat, he did not need to be greedy about the potential beast's soul. Idongmu did not say anything and stabbed his dagger into the jaw of the Triceratops, ending its life with several strikes. Whether Idongmu had gained a beast's soul. However, he did not have any special expression after killing the creature. Walking up to Hansen, he said, "You're good. Just average. I just broke 100, Hansen said casually. I know the locations of some other sacred blood creatures living alone. How about we continue to cooperate in the future?" Idongmu said seriously. That's okay. However, if it were a long-term cooperation, we could not split like this, Hansen smiled and said. We will split the meat half and half. The beast's soul will depend on our own luck. The fact that Idongmu said that showed he reckoned that Hansen was stronger than himself. Otherwise, because he provided the location, he should have taken 10% more. Okay, Hansen agreed. It would take Hansen some time to find sacred blood creatures, and he would not necessarily be able to kill those creatures alone. Yi Dongwu will provide him with the location of the sacred blood creatures and he could take half of the gains. There was nothing wrong about that. Let's split up the sacred blood meat first. Han Sen pointed to the body of the Triceratops and said, "You can have all of it. You have poison on the weapon, so the meat has already been contaminated. Even if I take it, I will not dare to eat it," Yi Dongwu said calmly. "Thank you then." Han Sen summoned the angel, asking her to eat the Triceratops up. Humanoid pet. What is the level of it? Yi Dongwu stared at the archangel. With his background, he had never got a chance to have a humanoid pet. Sacred blood, Han Sen said casually. Yi Dongwu stared at the angel eating the Triceratops, feeling dazed. It was very hard for him to imagine that the angel who looked like a little girl would be able to consume the better half of the meat of the Triceratops in a little while and did not seem to be stopping anytime soon. He turned back and looked at Han Sen, seeing Han Sen was eating his leftover barbecue. Yi Dongwu's expression became more complicated. As the descendant of a senator, he was someone who had seen a lot. However, he had never seen someone like Han Sen who fed a humanoid sacred blood pet with all his sacred blood meat since he entered Second God's sanctuary. The resources on the ice field were extremely limited. Although this creature was big in size, it was a sacred blood creature nonetheless. Feeding it all to the pet made even Yi Dongwu cringe. At this point, Yi Dongwu had to reassess Han Sen. Strong, wanton, and careless. Even Yi Dongwu felt puzzled about the background of Han Sen. It is about time. I must return to the Alliance now. Let's meet next time. After the Archangel finished eating the Triceratops, Han Sen directly said goodbye. Although as long as Jai Yanran did not call him, he was idle and had infinite free time. He'd still go back from time to time in case Jai Yanran got worried. I will return to the Alliance as well. Let's go together. Although Yi Dongwu did not need to go back to the Alliance, he wanted to find out about Han Sen's background and who he was. The two persons teleported back to the Alliance from Starwheel Shelter. Yi Dongwu immediately looked up all the information about Han Sen. The name Han Sen being real was out of Yi Dongwu's expectation. After looking up Han Sen's materials, Yi Dongwu felt quite strange. Judging from Han Sen's background, he was such an ordinary guy that it did not match his achievements at all. From his information, the biggest difference in Han Sen's life was his girlfriend Jai Yanran. However, although the Jis were an incredibly prominent family, Han Sen only knew Jai Yanran after he went to the military academy. Before that, he did not receive any help from the Jis. Even now, the Jis had not been helping Han Sen. Before Jai Yanran married the guy, the Jis had no reason to help him. Whether she would marry Han Sen was still unknown. Aside from that, Yi Dongwu felt incredible reading about Han Sen's growth. Yi Dongwu thought if he were Han Sen, he would never have achieved what Han Sen had. In addition, according to the information, Han Sen had entered Second God's sanctuary for less than a year. The fact that he had such fitness on the ice field with limited resources made Yi Dongwu feel incredulous. How did he do it? Yi Dongwu couldn't help frowning. Han Sen returned to Daphne, trying to meet Jai Yanran. However, at the door, he was blocked by Annie. "We are both guards. Why are you minding my business?" Han Sen was very upset with Annie. Since she had come, he did not have much chance to be alone with Jai Yanran. "Because I said no," Annie stayed cold and said, "What if I must go inside?" Han Sen was mad, asking Annie coldly, "You can try." Annie looked at Han Sen indifferently, as if she were looking at a dead man. Han Sen immediately wanted to go inside by force. Just because she was a surpasser, Annie was being incredibly arrogant, which pissed him off. The doors of Jai Yanran's office suddenly opened and Jai Yanran came out from inside. She held Han Sen's hand and said to Annie, "Colonel Annie, he is also my guard. He has the right to see me at any time." "I'm sorry, Miss Jai. The order I got was to protect your safety 100%, ruling out all the unsafe elements," Annie said calmly. "Please, Captain. This is in the military," Jai Yanran said, a bit upset. Annie did not speak again, but she looked the same, not taking Jai Yanran's words seriously. Jai Yanran did not say anything more and pulled Han Sen into her office. "Do not have any conflict with her in the future. She will kill you," Jai Yanran said helplessly to Han Sen. "A guard can be so arrogant, disrespecting your words," Han Sen said. "Technically speaking, she is my guard. However, I do not deserve to have a guard like that with my current position. She was arranged by that person in my family. In fact, she only listens to him and my words are basically useless," Jai Yanran said helplessly, leaning against Han Sen. "However, she is also doing it for my safety, so do not provoke her in the future." Han Sen nodded. He also knew that Jai Yanran's safety depended on Annie. It was impossible for her to count on him as her guard since he was away all the time. When Han Sen left Jai Yanran's room, it was already nighttime. Annie was still guarding the door. Judging by her position, it seemed she had not even moved in the past couple of hours. Men like you are a shame to all soldiers. When Hansen just stepped out of the room, he suddenly heard Annie saying coldly, "Are you talking about me?" Hansen turned around, stared at Annie and asked, "The most disgusting are men who live off women like you," Annie said to Hansen, disgusted. Hansen looked Annie up and down for several minutes, but he said nothing. "What are you looking at?" Annie felt uncomfortable under his gaze and exclaimed coldly, "With the professional judgment of someone who lives off women, I can tell you that you do not have what it takes for a man to live off you. You will probably die alone," Hansen said seriously. "You," Annie was shivering in anger, "you think you are so good because you are a surpasser. If I were a surpasser, I could kill you with one strike. Do you believe that?" Hansen curled his lips and said, "I will wait for you to become a surpasser and see how you kill me with one strike." Annie's face became blue. However, she was not someone good at talking. She was so angry that she could say nothing. In fact, there was a reason for Annie to hate Hansen so much. Because her dad died early, she was raised by a single parent. Later on, Annie's mother found a boyfriend, who initially treated both Annie and her mother well. He had nice temper and worked hard. Even Annie as a little girl thought he was a good man and called him father. Who knows that the man was not only a gigolo, but also a fraud. A couple of days before he was about to marry Annie's mother, he took away all their belongings, which made life very hard for Annie and her mother. She grew to loathe this type of man very much. Furthermore, Hansen came to Daphne and became Jai Yanran's guard because of nepotism. Coupled with what Annie had heard at the gist, she hated Hansen very much. "You do not have to wait until the future. If you dare to play with me, I can prove it to you how weak you are if we are of the same status," said Hansen, curling his lips. "What do you want?" Annie thought Hansen wanted her to suppress her strength to fight him. Annie did not mind that. Even if she had to lower her strength, she believed she could beat Hansen completely. "Let's go to the training room," Hansen said and walked toward the training room. "Now is not the time." Annie did not move, but said coldly, "What? Are you afraid?" Hansen looked at her sarcastically. Annie ignored it and said, "Now I still have to work. I will see you at the training room in 3 hours. "Okay, I will wait for you." Hansen appreciated this quality about her very much. She was indeed a good soldier, loyal to her duties. Hansen returned to his room and caught the unicorn beetle which was going around everywhere. Without eating or drinking, it did not starve. Hansen tried to feed it with different things, but it was not interested in any food. Hansen wondered how it kept itself alive. At the agreed time, when Hansen reached the training room, he saw that Annie had changed from uniform to a white combat suit. "Let's begin," she said coldly, seeing Hansen coming in. "What do you want?" Hansen stood outside and did not enter. "Don't you want me to suppress my strength to fight you? Are you afraid now?" Annie said with contempt. "Sister, when have I said that? I am no idiot. Even if you suppress your own strength, your eyesight and reflex are not something that could be reduced. I am not foolish, so why would I ask for that?" Hansen curled his lips. "Then what do you want?" Annie frowned. "We have both learned military boxing, right?" Hansen said. "What if I have?" Annie asked. "If you have learned it, that's easy. Let's do it the civilized way. I name a move and then you can name a move. We will both use the techniques from voter boxing only. If that fair?" Hansen said. "The way of combat is focused on the reflex and flexibility. If we are talking about the moves, how can we decide who is the winner?" "Moving the lips is no fun," said Annie frowning. "Just tell me if you dare to do it. If you do not dare, you can leave now and stay out of my way in the future," Hansen said contemptuously. "Okay, I will see what tricks you have up your sleeves." Annie did not believe that Hansen would win using the same military boxing. "Lady first, you go." Hansen felt relaxed, as he was fully confident. Talking about the moves, he would definitely win. All other elements were ruled out and only the moves matter. It was like playing Go. Although the pieces were the same, the method to calculate was different. In order to win, the strategy was key, which was what Hansen was good at. Strength, speed, and reflex were less important. Although Annie was surpasser, a civilized fight like this one wiped clean all her advantages. On the other hand, Hansen, who was good at calculation, had an advantage. Head punch. Annie thought about it and said a move of attacking. Sideway punches, left of your ribs, Hansen answered quickly. Backward elbow, turning to the left to attack your neck. Annie felt slightly uncomfortable. She had never tried to make the move mentally and had to think for a while before she said anything. The two persons exchanged 30 moves and then Annie felt something was wrong. She found herself trapped in a dangerous situation. Although the moves were all the same, Annie felt it was hard for her to attack. When 14 moves were exchanged, she could no longer think of a way to dodge Han Sen's attacks. "You lost," Han Sen said contentedly. "This is just talking. If it were in a real fight, you could never have done that," Annie said, unwilling to accept her failure. "That is okay. We can act out what we had just said. However, this time, neither of us shall use force. We will just act out what we had said." Han Sen walked up to Annie and said, "Okay." Annie did not believe that. However, when the two persons were sparring like Han Sen had just explained, Annie did not have anywhere to dodge when it came to the 39th move. Unless he used speed and strength beyond Han Sen, she would lose for sure. "How about that? Are you convinced?" Han Sen glanced at Annie and said, "This is the first time for me to do this. I'm not like you who is all talk." Annie was not convinced. She did not believe that she would be inferior to Han Sen. "That's fine. We can do it again. I will beat you until you are convinced." Han Sen curled his lips and said, "Okay, but we will both speak and act out this time." Annie thought she lost to Han Sen because she was not good at imagination. "Okay," Han Sen smiled and said. Acting out was not the important part. As long as no strength was involved, then Annie would not still be inferior to him. After all, everyone had a specialty, and Han Sen's was calculation. Annie seemed to be the type that were good at violent moves. The fight began again. However, the result was no different from last time. This time, she lost even faster. She could no longer continue after the 35th move. "Are you convinced?" Han Sen asked again. "No." Annie bit her lips, unable to accept the fact that she was inferior to Han Sen. There was no way she was now the match of a man who lived off a woman. "Then let's do it again," Han Sen grinned and said. Annie was looking for trouble herself, so he had no reason not to give it to her. Annie was someone stubborn. They fought for more than 30 times and she did not win even once. Lost, and lost. She did not even make it to the 40th move once. Although she did not use strength and her energy was not consumed, she became pale and sweaty on her forehead. She did not understand why she would lose to Han Sen again and again using the same moves only with different order, not to mention in such a miserable way. Initially, she thought as long as she was familiar with this way of fighting, she could turn the situation around. All her previous losses were just because she was not used to it. However, the fact was cruel. Whether or not she knew the way of fighting well, she lost equally. Annie found that she was so weak in front of Han Sen just based on the moves in martial arts. This man who she despised seemed to be exceptionally good in this regard. Now Annie had understood she was no match to Han Sen in this respect. "Do we need to continue?" Han Sen smiled at Annie. "It is no wonder that you want because you have studied these trivial matters. However, if it were a real fight, there is no way you could beat me." Annie knew that she had lost, but she would not admit it. "Then let's fight for real," Han Sen said abruptly. "You really dare to fight me?" Annie was dazed. She did not believe that Han Sen dared to fight her. In terms of real fighting abilities, Han Sen was quite weak compared to her. "Yes, but hands only." Han Sen smiled. Han Sen explained himself. What he was talking about was to play red hand. If she were to fight him, Han Sen might not even be able to survive 2 or 3 strikes from Annie. "Okay." After hearing Han Sen's explanation, Annie agreed without hesitation. The fact that she was not able to use her strength just now made her feel quite sullen. Although there were many limitations in terms of playing red hands, she could use her own speed and strength to punish Han Sen slightly in order to avenge herself. Annie did not believe that she would still lose to Han Sen when she could use her own strength and speed. That could never happen. "You made the first move just now, so it is my turn this time, right?" Han Sen asked Annie. She did not say anything but put her right hand above Han Sen's right hand. She did not believe that Han Sen could beat her with his speed. "Did you know why you lost just now?" Han Sen asked her suddenly. "Why?" Slap. Annie was still preoccupied with the fact that she had lost to Han Sen. When Han Sen mentioned it, she was distracted immediately. When she was about to ask why, Han Sen's hand had already hit hers. "You are shameless." Annie gritted teeth, wanting to kill Han Sen immediately. "The game is all about tricks. If they are not allowed, you should say that earlier." "Tell me, are tricks allowed?" Han Sen asked, smiling. "As you." Slap. When Annie just said 2 words, she was hit on her hand again. Staring at Han Sen with her eyes wide, she almost looked like a tigress that was about to swallow Han Sen. Han Sen played red hands with Annie from the very beginning. It would be hard for him to hit her even with his sneak attack skills, considering her reflex and speed as a surpasser. However, because Han Sen had already broken the piece of her mind earlier, she could no longer treat the game normally, which was why he was able to affect her state of mind and hit her unexpectedly. At this point, Annie's mind had become a mess. She was watching out for Han Sen at any moment. However, the more she did that, the easier it was for her to be hit. Slap, slap, slap. Annie stared her eyes wide, watching Han Sen as if she had seen a ghost. She was both sullen and angry. There was no way she could understand why she would not be able to dodge Han Sen's strikes based on her speed. She hated Han Sen's shamelessness and wickedness even more, which distracted her each time so much that she could not focus on dodging his strikes. As the stone was tossed into a well, there was bound to be ripple. The amazing fact about human mind was that sometimes you knew what the right thing to do was, but you could not control your own temper and thoughts. Annie knew that she should calm down and stay away from Han Sen's provocation. However, she was so upset at this point that Han Sen's smiles made her feel incredibly angry. There was no way she could calm down. Slap, slap, slap. Annie was hit again and again. She could not tolerate Han Sen's words. Boom. All of a sudden, electricity boomed on Annie's body, turning her into a burning light bulb. She hit the table with her palm and turned the table into ashes. Han Sen looked at Annie, appalled. He was terrified. The strength of a surpasser was so scary that it was beyond imagination. If it were him that Annie attacked, Han Sen would probably become ashes as well. Fortunately, it was in the alliance, so there was no way Annie would lay a finger on him no matter how mad she was. Watching Annie was so mad that she was shivering and sparkling. Han Sen said with a smile, "You want to hit me because you lost." Staring Han Sen for a long while, lights disappeared on Annie's body. Without saying anything, she turned around and left. She was afraid that she might not be able to resist the urge to kill Han Sen if she said one more word to him. Asshole, bastard, shameless. Annie did not go back to her room but went to the virtual camp directly. She vented her madness in the virtual camp like crazy. Seeing the alloy table that had turned into ashes, Han Sen could not help spitting his tongue. He decided not to provoke that woman killer. If she disregarded anything and hit him, Han Sen could not survive a strike from her at all. Surpasser is so scary. They are not human anymore. Although Han Sen said that, he looked forward to becoming a surpasser even more. After eating the entire Snake Fish King, Han Sen had gained 9 sacred Geno points, and currently, he had 21 sacred Geno points already. When Han Sen was trying to find Idongmu to hunt sacred blood creatures together, he failed to find him. Without other sacred blood creatures to hunt, Han Sen thought of the crab again. Although the shell of the golden crab was hard, Han Sen had practiced the yin force and could penetrate its shell. Maybe he could kill it after all. The key was his strength. If he did not have enough strength, that was fine as well. Han Sen decided to dive into the Crystal Palace first, hunt some primitive fish creatures at the bottom of the lake, and fill up his primitive Geno points. Hunting fish creatures at the bottom of the lake was much easier than fishing. Han Sen returned to the bottom of the frozen lake again. With the silver eel this time, it was easy for him to come to the Crystal Palace. The golden crab climbed out after hearing the noise. When it saw it was Han Sen, it quickly went back to the cabin, disregarding what Han Sen was doing outside. It never went out again. Han Sen did not provoke the crab but looked at the fish creatures that were swimming at the bottom of the lake. He thought to himself, when I have the Crystal Palace to myself, I will never worry about creature resources because I can go to the deep ocean to hunt. Since the Crystal Palace was indestructible, Han Sen was not afraid to encounter scary creatures at the bottom of the sea. He could always hide in the cabin. The most important thing at this moment was to control this Crystal Palace. Otherwise, he could go nowhere. Standing on the deck, Han Sen felt like he was in an aquarium. Above his head, all kinds of fish creatures were swimming around. However, because there was no glass, Han Sen could reach into the water to touch them. After waiting for a while, when seeing a golden anchovy swimming nearby, Han Sen reached out immediately and grabbed it into the shelter. The golden anchovy suddenly fell on the floor. Without water, it had lost almost all its abilities to fight. All he could do was to jump and try to go back to the water. However, Han Sen would never give him the opportunity and trampled it to death. Primitive creature golden anchovy killed. Beast soul of golden anchovy gained. Eat its meat to gain 0 to 10 primitive Geno points randomly. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss the next chapter.